Hey guys, there's this show that just finished airing. It's called Family Doesn't Matter. It's about a Negro family in Chirac that gets into all sorts of hijinks. I'm just kidding. It's about a guy called Steven, and nobody else matters at all whatsoever. So Steven is some dude who has to break everything he sees, and then ask if he did it. Like, if you didn't do it, then who did? What are you asking all these questions for? His parents hate him, so he's always visiting his neighbors, which happens to be the aforementioned family that doesn't matter. But then his parents flat out dip on him in the middle of the series, so Steven moves in with the other family. Also, despite being the main character, he wasn't even introduced until like a couple episodes in. Before, it was about some guy called Charlie and his wife and kids. Charlie is a Fed who knows that Steven is a parasite, yet he lets him in his house regularly, so he invites his own problems. His wife is some headstrong woman, and is like the typical black mother, and you know isn't exciting or interesting at all whatsoever. But just like the cool king of Calabasas, they thought they could switch the wife with some random light skin and none of the niggas would notice. But her being a light skin actually makes sense, cause they also live with their sister and she's loud as hell and has a son, and the sister owns a restaurant that actually makes money. And also the Fed has a mom that lives with them and does something, but who cares? The Fed's kids are Edison, Lori, and a nobody. They got the nobody out of the way quick, and they were so disrespectful they even tried to pretend they never had her in the first place. And there was some other little kid they adopted late into the series, but he doesn't need to be talked about, so we're not gonna go over him. But yeah, Edison is some guy that's like the typical Negro teen, getting hoes and bad grades. But then at the end of the series, he wants to get rid of his hood pass and become a Fed, but it's whatever because the Feds in the show are actually good people, so they get it passed. At first, Edison thinks Steven is a lame, so he tries to clown and avoid him, but they eventually become friends or something. And also Steven has a boner for Lori, and it's a big plot point in this series. Like any other person, Lori knows that Steven is a dork, so she doesn't give him the time of day. So Steven makes a lit version of himself that Lori actually likes, but also some other girl actually likes Steven. They try to do something with it, but he decides that he's so irrational, he can only sell it for like one female out of 3 billion in the world, and told her to take a hike. Then Lori goes off of Bean, and actually picks the dork over the lit version because he's persistent or something. Meanwhile, nowadays when niggas try to be persistent, they get hit with sexual harassment charges. Like, what is the world coming to? But it turns out that being a stalker is a genetic trait among Steven's family, because he has a cousin that has a hard-on for Edison, and she's even worse with it than Steven, like she really on him. But then when she tries to move on, he tells her to stay just to mix it up and make his life more dramatic. Like, what kind of sicko is he? This nigga already got a hoe, yeah, you need another one just to once you. Like, get over yourself. And also he has some friend named Walden that's even dumber than him, and is basically the classic 90s dark-skin oaf. I'm not with the gimmicks and I see through them. He used to be with the ops, and then he saw the light and started hanging out with Edison and Steven. For the longest time I thought Steven was like 100 years younger than Edison for some reason, but then I come to find out they're in the same class and their actors were born the same year. But this nigga Edison really looks like he's twice the size of Steven, but you know, things happen, so I can't say I don't believe it. So now we're gonna go over a couple classic episodes, cause you know we got the time. Also, since I was born like last week, I didn't watch the show when it actually aired, and my first time watching it was on the History Channel at night. The first episode I saw was when the aunt's restaurant got wrecked by the guys. So the episode starts with a bunch of niggas handing out Elsa, Steven, and the family. So the Fed shows up, so the crew knows their time has come and they vanish. So later on, everybody is celebrating the relief of not having to deal with the niggas anymore, when suddenly they get a call that the restaurant is basically in shambles. Then the cop has some sappy moment where he's mad at the ops, but honestly he should have just shot them. I mean, it's not like he wouldn't have gotten away with it. But then it turns out that the gang also gave the hands to Edison, and he agrees to cooperate with the authorities. So seeing his son need a stretcher prompts Charlie to want to let the tech slam, but then this man Steven wants to whine and say that if he does that, he'll be charged with police brutality or something. So instead, Steven convinces the cop to let him be a gang prospect and then wear wires to get some dirt on the niggas. And since the niggas are dumb, they basically self-snitch, but then they also find out that Steven is wearing a wire. So 12 has to step in and save him before he becomes a pack. So the episode ends with the restaurant getting fixed up and the gang getting out of the way, while Steven is seen as a hero. Despite this, after this episode, they go back to clowning him and treat him like a general waste of space. So basically nothing has changed in his life. But as you can see, the show is pretty tame and mundane, but not for one of the actually funny episodes. So it starts out with Steven pretending to be a wizard and wasting Charlie's time. Like, it's bad enough the nigga has to chase down ops on a daily basis, and now he wastes his time with this nonsense. So the routine ends with Steven screwing Charlie over and then pissing off. So the next scene is with Lori and her friends chilling, but then the friend leaves with Walden, and Lori is caught locking by some Chirac thoughts. So they step to her wanting her jacket, and she tries to fight back, but she gets finessed and has to be tended to by her family. Then Steven shows up to offer his support or something, like he could actually do something. But this nigga Steven asks what the infidels did to her, like they in the Middle East or something. When she reveals who did it, he shows his natural pussy color, so you know so far nothing has been accomplished. Then it turns out that 12 got the main hoe, but still Steven trying to prove he's about it, so he bullies and finesses some nerd. Like, what kind of man attacks his own kind? This scene shows that Steven is a self-hating dweeb. So then the hosts show up and Steven tries to throw hands, but then they diss him and say that if Lori's a witness, then they'll put her on her shirts because they got the burners on deck. And even though this is Chirac, where even the most pacifist office niggas keep the heat on them. For some reason, Lori and Steven are concerned about it. So the next day, Lori's talking to her friend and she also keeping that tool. So some guy shows up trying to give Lori a stick, and this pussy nigga Steven wants to prevent her from not being caught slipping. But right before Lori can make the purchase, it turns out that her friend wasn't quick enough on the draw, and the ops give her a couple of shells for her shoes. Then the parents start whining about how their own daughter was even forced to think about buying a pool, and back in my day, a movie costed a nickel, or some dust like that. Then they hold some rap festival about how guns aren't cool or something, but nobody was trying to hear that because drill music was the wave at the time. But then one guy shows up and puts his gun in, so I guess all is well in the world. So the episode ends with the niggas talking about how guns are bad and stuff, and you should always be locking. But what if you're trying to get home or something, and the ops try to hit a lick on you or put you on a shirt? Then what are you gonna do? So this next episode is also about street niggas, but this one isn't from Chirac, he's from Detroit, and also he's actually related to our main hero. So it starts out with Steven chilling in the crib, when all of a sudden his cousin shows up, and since he's fake, he tries to close the door and keep him out. So the cousin says that he's just trying to hang out with his blood, but Steven knows that he's fake too. So it turns out that the cousin is a broke boy and needs a couple racks. He owes some Don a bunch of money, and if he doesn't pay it back, then he'll become a thing of the past. So of course Steven turns his back on him and says he can't stay in the crib, but the cousin doesn't take orders from dweebs, so he stays and starts listening to that Detroit heat. So the rest of the family comes in, and the nigga tries to shoot his shot with Lori, but it doesn't work out. But the other niggas think he's cool, so you know he makes himself at home. Then Charlie comes home and immediately sees a young black male, aka an op, so they start beefing because he's listening to T Grizzly, and the Fed can't take all that heat. Also being a young street nigga, the cousin can't conversate with the law, so the cop bounces. So the wife tells the young nigga to chill out, and then she tells Charlie to get along with him, cause the cops be shooting niggas in Detroit, so of course he hates 12. But to be honest, why would Charlie help some nigga he doesn't even know just cause he came to his house? Like, what has this young nigga ever done for him? Meanwhile, the niggas are all chilling at a concert when the cousin starts beefing with the lit version of Steven. So the lit version of Steven hits up the lame version to see what's up, cause he wanna know why his op cousin is hitting on his girl. So then they both pull up on the cousin through the group call, and nothing really happens, so it's whatever. So then when the niggas get back home, Charlie announces that he put the Don behind bars, so of course now the cousin is happy that he can live as a free man, and he makes amends with the Fed, so you know everything is chill now. Then the episode ends with Steven still trying to beef, but he ends up making himself look like a goofy, cause the cousin is now a peaceful man. So yeah, that's that, and now for the final episode. This episode is a two-parter too, so it's gonna take a while. It takes place right after Lori drunkenly chose the drug version of Steven over the lit version, and since this is like in the past, there was no such thing as dating, so the niggas start making plans for marriage. So the episode starts out with them planning a wedding, and Steven's parents are such ops that they won't even show up. But anyway, some man that went to space pulls up and says that for his efforts, Steven has been selected to be the first student to be in space. But Steven tries to say no because he wants to get his dick wet on time, but Lori tells him to just go, so that's the deal. Meanwhile, Edison is joining the force just like his old man, and it looks like everything is chill. Then Charlie gives the boy a lucky bulletproof vest, and of course that means he's gonna catch a shell, like the show ain't slick. So a bunch of lame boring stuff happens, and Lori gets worried for Steven or something, so he promises to make it back safe. Honestly, this is a bunch of sappy lameness we weren't trying to see. Then some other cop family pulls up to congratulate them on their son joining the PO, and also to help them get some favors pulled in. So it cuts back to the actually relevant plots, and we see that Steven has been finally sent to space. Meanwhile, Edison is whining because the cop family made him a ticket man for his own safety. Meanwhile, Steven is doing stuff in space and having an orgasm throwing tennis balls together. Then he makes a machine that proves the obvious, and once again he's seen as a hero for all ages. Like this nigga Steven is always doing something lit, and actually making moves unlike his dumbass worthless classmates. He'd still be treated like a nobody by everyone. Like in what world would the smartest nigga in the world be treated like trash? And yet niggas say that they miss the past, like get off the perks. But it turns out that all is not well, because the satellite has hit the spaceship or something, and now the rocket is spiraling out of control. And now the niggas wanna act all scared or something, as if Steven isn't the main character who is immune to all death and serious injury. But then these two lame niggas knock themselves out trying to figure out how to fix this nonsense, so now Steven is stuck cleaning up the mess. So when he finally does the job he shouldn't even have to do, the bum niggas wake up and then Steven hits him with the gravity and they get knocked out again. So meanwhile Charlie pulls up on his wife because she's trying to play Edison like a pussy, making him give out tickets. So Charlie tries to give him back street patrol and there's some tension, but who cares. Meanwhile at the space thing, they decide they have to send the dweeb to outer space in order to fix the problem, so he gets geeked up. Meanwhile Edison is giving out tickets to some women when all of a sudden some op lets his heat go off and blasts Edison. So when the op tries to do the dash, he still manages to get caught by the cop. So Edison is at home getting tended to his wounds, and he tells his mom to piss off and let him be a full-time Fed. So she agrees and they all have another sappy moment about family or something. but once again, we're not trying to see all that. We're trying to see the jokes. Then Steven's ex-host shows up and tries to see if Steven is on the news. Basically, she wastes everyone's time by putting her picture on the news as Steven's fiance. So yeah, we didn't need to see this. So then Steven gets the satellite, but he isn't tethered. So the bums at the science station turn on some machine and turns the power station off. And if this wasn't a main TV comedy, then maybe this actually would have been a tense moment. But as always, this nigga Steven thinks of some way out of the situation, and he makes it back to the spaceship, and everyone rejoices and is glad. And Steven is once again revered as a hero for the 1 billionth time in his life, and the couple gets reunited, and they all have a gay old time and live happily ever after. Anyway, the show isn't really much, like it's not bad or anything, but it's not really particularly impressive either. I mean, it can be funny, so it's good enough for what it is, so I don't really have much to say about it. But I can't stand when people want to call this show the Black Full House. Full House is an unfunny, boring disgrace, while this show is actually somewhat funny and interesting. And once again, if you have a hard on for lame shows that were from before you were even born, like Full House, then fuck off because I don't care. I didn't like the show when I first saw it, and I don't like it now, and there's gonna be a new video really soon, so look out for that. So remember, next time you want to pick on the smart nigga, keep in mind that he's gonna be making moves in the future, while you'll live your life in obscurity and general lameness. Okay guys, make sure that when you subscribe you hit the notification button, because that lets you know whenever I make a new video, and as always, thanks for watching.